Welcome to Rice Public Radio. We've got quite a video for you today. It's Ben Shapiro. He gets his ass whooped on BBC, and it's just absolutely hilarious, and we're going to break it down for you. So just a little bit of background. Ben Shapiro goes on the BBC, and he's interviewed by Andrew Neil. Now, I don't know much about British journalists. So from what I've seen and what I've read on the internet, Andrew Neil is a very conservative commentator on the BBC. So I'm just going to read you a really short paragraph about him on Wikipedia. Andrew Neil is a British journalist and broadcaster. As of 2019, Neil presents live political programs This Week on BBC One and Politics Live on BBC Two. Neil was appointed editor of the Sunday Times by Rupert Murdoch and served in this position from 1983 to 1995. After this, he became a contributor to the Daily Mail. He was formerly chief executive and editor-in-chief of the Press Holdings Group. In 1988, he became a founding member of Sky TV and also Murdoch's News Corporation. He is the current chairman of Press Holdings Media Group, whose titles include The Spectator and the ITP Media Group. Okay, so I guess he's pretty well known inside the UK. So we know that Andrew Neil is a conservative. He's right-wing because he works under Rupert Murdoch. Rupert Murdoch is the current CEO of Fox News. So Andrew Neil supported the Iraq War. He doesn't believe in climate change, so he is conservative. So that's going to be important later on. Okay, so I'm going to play you I think, 7-minute clip of Ben Shapiro's interview, and we're going to jump back in and talk about the various segments of it. So let's take a listen.
I'm interested that you think there's a thought movement inside the Republican Party. I mean, haven't the Conservatives run out of ideas in America? All the new policies, the Medicare for all, $15 minimum wage, the Green New Deal, they're all coming from the left, and they're popular.
Well, frankly, I'm confused by the idea that any of those are particularly new ideas. I mean, most of those ideas have been around since Franklin Delano Roosevelt at the very earliest, or at the very latest, rather. Some of them go all the way back to Woodrow Wilson. But the idea that new ideas are absent in the Republican Party is obviously untrue. We have a very strong debate that goes on inside sort of the conservative halls of intelligentsia about what is the appropriate action to take with regard to the medical system. Should global warming be considered a real threat, or should global warming be considered something that technology will solve? And if so, what are the best aspects of solving that? Now, there's a rich intellectual debate on the right about nationalism versus patriotism, for example, or populism versus free marketeerism. That debate is happening on the right to sort of suggest that the right in America is bereft of ideas, but the left is full of ideas. Number one, not all ideas are good ideas. I mean, AOC is pretty good evidence of that. I'm a big fan of some old ideas myself that I think are pretty good. But beyond that, I think that it is intellectual sneering of the highest order to suggest that only the left has new and decent ideas.
Some of the ideas that are popular in your side of politics would seem to take us back to the Dark Ages. Georgia, new abortion laws, which you are much in favor of, that a woman who miscarries could get 30 years. A Georgian woman who travels to another state for an abortion procedure could get 10 years. These are extreme hard policies.
Well, okay, a couple of things. One, I'm not sure. I mean, frankly, I don't know whether are you an objective journalist or are you an opinion journalist?
I'm a journalist that asks questions.
Okay, so you're a supposedly objective journalist calling policies with which you disagree barbaric and suggesting only one side of the political aisle has ideas. So I just want to point out that I wish you would at least be honest in your own biases.
Mr. Shapiro, I know that broadcasting in America is now so polarized that on one program you only have the left and another one you just have the right. My job is to question those who have strong views and put an alternative to them. If you were an anti-abortion person, I would be putting pro-abortion questions to you. But you are
really would you call the pro-choice position?
So why don't you just answer my question,
sir? I'm happy to answer your question. Please answer this one. Would you suggest that a late-term abortion is brutal?
I'm not taking a
Is it
view
a
on
brutal
this issue.
policy
I'm
to allow
asking
late-term
you the
abortion?
questions.
Sir, you just suggested that the pro-life position is inherently brutal and terrible, so I'm asking you, as an objective journalist, would you ask the same question to a pro-choice advocate by calling their position brutal and horrible?
What I'm asking you is that why is it that a bill banning abortions after a woman has been pregnant for 6 weeks is not a return to the Dark Ages? What's your answer?
My answer is something called science. Human life exists at conception. It ought to be protected. Now, back to my question to you. You purport to be an objective journalist. BBC purports to be an objective down-the-middle network. It obviously is not. It never has been. And you, as a journalist, are proceeding to call one side of the political aisle ignorant, barbaric, and sending us back to the Dark Ages. Why don't you just say that you're on the left? Is this so hard for you? Why can't you just be honest?
Mr.
Seriously,
Shapiro,
it's a serious question.
Mr. Shapiro, if you only knew how ridiculous that statement is, you wouldn't have said it. Again, it was your description of the State of the Union address in 2012 as fascist.
The wording of President Trump's 2012 address was bad and wrong.
That's all. There are plenty of things that are bad and wrong, but it doesn't make them fascist.
Well, I suppose that's true. But if you would like to, again, if you'd like to read me the column out loud, I suppose I can critique it for you.
Oh, well, again, with Mr. Obama, you said, and you're Jewish yourself. I only mention that because, to put this in context, the Jews who vote for Obama are, by and large, Jews in name only. Ginos, you call them.
My statement was based on the fact that Jews in the United States, as an ethnic group, are largely irreligious, which is true by every single poll. Jews are the most irreligious group in the United States. As an Orthodox Jew who actually takes Judaism seriously, the point that I am making is that most Jews who are ethnically Jewish are not religiously Jewish in any context.
No. The point you were making is that Jews who vote for Obama are Jews in name only.
I said that, yes, that is correct. That Jews who voted for Barack Obama, a progenitor of the Iran deal, a person who was cracking down on religious liberty, a person who spent much of his career as president of the United States attempting to deprive Israel of the necessities to defend itself, that people, Jews who voted for President Obama, by and large, cared about Judaism far less than they did about other priorities.
Did you say they should turn their badge in as a Jew?
Yes, I believe that if you are somebody who takes Judaism seriously, that comes along with ideological commitment.
I mean, I guess.
Also, I hope you're having fun, by the way, going through every old tweet that I've ever sent to try and do gotcha questions. But if you'd like to have a discussion about my general philosophy or things I've done in, say, I don't know, that's 2012, so it's now 2019. If you'd like to discuss something I've done in, say, like the past 5 years, why don't we do that? How about that?
Because your book is a criticism of how angry America is and how America has to do better. And I'm simply
I have an entire list on my website, sir. On my list, I have an entire website of dumb, bad things that I've said.
I'm simply trying to point out some of the things you've said that seem to me to help to stoke that anger. For example, you said Israelis like to build, Arabs like to bomb crap and live in open sewage.
Well, as I say in an article entitled, here's a list of all the giant, bad, dumb things I've ever said.
Was that dumb?
What? Yes, that's a dumb tweet. And not only, but it is also important to mention that the next few tweets clarify that tweet is specifically referring to the Hamas leadership, which, by the way, a BBC I've seen is relatively reticent to condemn.
No, actually, it wasn't. What you went on to do and say, you are correct about the slur on Arabs. It's not all Arabs that want to live in open sewage and blow things up. It's just Palestinians, you went on to say.
No, it says the ones who take sides against Israel in the Israel-Palestinian conflict.
Population is rotten to the core, you went on to say. Not Hamas, the Palestinian Arab population.
I say that by poll numbers, they elected Hamas. They educate their children in school that Israel should be obliterated, sir.
I guess.
If you want to read, honestly, this is a giant waste of time in the sense that the entire interview is designed for you to shout slogans or old things that I've said at me. I don't see how this forwards the debate. You talk about undermining the public discourse. It seems to me that simply going through and finding lone things that sound bad out of context and then hitting people with them is a way for you to make a quick buck on BBC off the fact that I'm popular and no one has ever heard of you.
There are not many bucks to be made on the BBC, unlike American broadcasting, Mr. Shapiro. The point I'm trying to make is that your words are hardly designed to produce the consensus and understanding that the book seems to want to produce. That's my point, that you write about, Judeo-Christian culture and so on, but so much of what you've said in the past would seem to turn its back on Judeo-Christian culture.
You're lecturing me on Judeo-Christian culture after you call the pro-life position barbaric?
I just asked you a question.
And I asked you a question. You failed to answer a single one of mine. Frankly, I find this whole thing a waste of time. If you want to read the book and critique the book, why don't you read and critique the book? If you want to critique me, you can think whatever you want of me.
Why don't you
frankly,
just try and
I don't
answer
care.
the
I don't
questions?
frankly give a damn what you think of me since I've never heard of you.
And I've never heard of you until I briefed myself for this. But that's not the issue. You have a
Then
new
why the hell
book
are you
out,
interviewing
and
me, sir?
it's an interesting book. But my point is, your book claims that
Well, it'd be
society...
nice if you would quote it from time to time.
Your book is... Well, actually, I've done so several times, and I'm about to do so again, if you would let me just finish the question. Your book
frankly, I don't
claims
think
that society
honestly,
is turning its
sir,
back on Judeo-Christian values.
Yeah,
What are those values?
Considering
what are the values it's turning its back on?
I'm not inclined to continue an interview with a person as badly motivated as you as an interviewer. So I think we're done here. I appreciate your time, sir.
All right.
Thank you so much.
Thank you for your time and for showing that anger is not part of American political discourse. Now, Mr. Shapiro, we'll say goodbye.
Okay, so in the beginning, Andrew Neil tells Ben Shapiro that in the United States, all the popular issues are coming from the left, which includes tackling climate change, like the Green New Deal, raising the minimum wage to a living wage, and Medicare for all. And he rightly says that these policies are very popular. So what does Ben Shapiro say? He says, oh, that's not true, because there's a lot of ideas on the right, and that he gives a couple of examples. I just find it hilarious that he says there's a vigorous debate on climate change and if it's like actually happening or if technology can help us combat it. And that's so stupid, because pretty much every scientific society in the United States believes that climate change is occurring and it's caused by man-made activity. So it's just like 99% of all scientists believe that climate change is real. So saying that there's vigorous debate on climate change just makes you look like a complete moron and a complete doofus. I'll give Ben Shapiro the point that there is debate on protectionism versus completely free markets. I agree that that's a discussion that's happening in conservative circles, because there's people who are more nationalistic and protectionist where they want to protect American industry, and there's more libertarian, like free marketers, who want fair trade throughout the entire world. So I agree that is a debate. Ben Shapiro also meant, but I think another stupid thing that Ben Shapiro brings up is debate over the medical system in the United States. I mean, what the hell does that mean? You see on the left, we have Medicare for all. We're staunch believers in Medicare for all. What is the debate on the right? He's not bringing up any solid policy. He's just saying that. He's just bringing up a question. Oh, there's debate on what to do on the medical system. Well, what type of debate is there? Are you going to give us any examples? And Ben also takes an unnecessary shot at AOC. AOC's policies and beliefs are in line with the American people. She believes in raising the minimum wage. She wants to implement a Medicare for all system and tackle climate change. These are issues that are very, very supported by the American people. People want the higher wages. People want something done about the climate. People want a Medicare for all single payer system. So I don't know. Ben Shapiro's just purposely taking a shot at AOC for no reason. And then Andrew Neil pivots to abortion and how some of our abortion legislation in the United States is very harsh and very cruel, which is absolutely right. You see that there's various states in the past weeks and months who've passed these draconian abortion laws, and how many basically banning abortions, how there's going to be criminal penalties for women if they have abortion at the first heartbeat or after 6 weeks, which is absolutely absurd, because some women don't even know that they're pregnant at 6 weeks. How do you and there's actually criminal penalties for doing an abortion. That's, I agree with Andrew Neil that is pretty barbaric, pretty draconian. So Ben Shapiro gets triggered and says, oh my God, like, you're not asking me fair and objective questions. Like, are you a biased journalist? And what a baby. What a freaking baby. Because That's Andrew Neil's job. He's a journalist. He's supposed to ask tough questions. He's supposed to be adversarial. And this is a perfect opportunity for Ben Shapiro to defend his stance, but instead he doesn't. He just attacks Andrew Neil. So it's a complete lack of professionalism and respect on Ben Shapiro's part. And then Ben Shapiro says that his evidence for these policies of why he supports these abortion legislation is because it's science. Hey, dipshit, you're the one in the beginning of the segment who said there's a vigorous discussion on the right about climate change. Well, guess what? 99% of all scientists believe that climate change is occurring. Shut your mouth about using science as your evidence, because you don't believe in fucking evidence. If you did, you'd say climate change is real. And then probably one of the most hilarious parts of this segment, Ben Shapiro says to Andrew Neil, "Why don't you just call yourself a leftist?" And then Andrew Neil rebuts him and says, "Hey, if you knew how ridiculous that sounded, you wouldn't have said it." So Ben Shapiro makes a complete fool of himself. I already said in the beginning, Andrew Neil is a conservative political commentator in the UK. He works for Rupert Murdoch. He's taken positions in conservative news outlets and newspapers. So Ben Shapiro didn't do his homework when he came on to the show, because he wouldn't have called Andrew Neil a leftist. And it also shows how kind of like a child, how childish Ben Shapiro is, because he's using, all these right wingers, they always say like, oh, we have to, we're destroying people with logic. We're using the battle of ideas to win. And here it is. He's making a personal attack on Andrew Neil by saying, why don't you just call yourself a leftist and say that you're biased? So Ben Shapiro just a complete fool in this interview. Andrew Neil then quotes Ben Shapiro's own words and says, Israelis like to build, Arabs like to bomb crap and live in open sewage. How insanely bigoted and racist is this statement? It's just mind-boggling. And then, Ben Shapiro then tries to defend this tweet by saying, it was part of a list of dumb tweets that he said before, and it's only referring to the Hamas leadership. Andrew Neil says, no, it's only, you're actually referring to the Palestinians. And, Ben Shapiro then says, oh, but these Palestinians voted for Hamas in large numbers. Well, what is it? Is it Hamas or the Palestinian people? So it's a contradiction that Ben makes, and it's also a disgusting quote, because if you look at what's going on in the Middle East, you'll know that Israel is pretty much occupying the West Bank, controls all the resources and access points to the West Bank, is making all these illegal settlements, just absolutely oppressing the Palestinian people. So Ben Shapiro is just a fucking moron. So after talking about that, Ben Shapiro gets triggered, gets pissed off, and says, well, I shouldn't, why do I have to be interviewed? Because you're just taking all these things out of he says you're taking things out of context and it's just a way for you to make a quick buck, which is super ironic. Because what does Ben Shapiro do? He just spits out false statements, all these lies, and he's funded by all these right-wing organizations to do so. So it's just, man, Ben. And then Ben Shapiro says, oh, you're just trying to make a buck on the BBC because I'm popular and no one has ever heard of you. How childish do you have to be, Ben? This isn't a popularity contest. He's a damn journalist, and he's interviewing you, so you better answer the damn questions. What is, first of all, popularity doesn't have to do with anything. You can go on any network, small network, big network, answer the questions. When someone asks, you have to defend your stances. You have to say, this is why I believe in X, Y, and Z. This is the reasons why. So turning into some personal attack into some popularity contest makes you look like a complete fool, makes you look like a childish moron. And, honestly, you should lose some sort of credibility and respect for doing this crap. So near the end of the interview, Ben Shapiro is salty. He's triggered. He's a snowflake. He's mad. He's like, "Why are you interviewing me?" And Andrew Neil says it's for the purpose of talking about this interesting book. And then Ben Shapiro says, "Well, it'd be nice if you could quote it from time to time." And then Andrew Neil just hilariously slaps him in the face by saying, "Well, I have quoted it many times." And Ben Shapiro just gets mad, and he just stops the interview. Ben Shapiro and other conservative commentators like Dave Rubin, they all claim to have these great ideas that they're not playing identity politics, that they're just battling it out with facts and reason with their great ideas. Well, here's Ben Shapiro being interviewed on a news network about those same ideas that he holds so dearly and failing to defend any of it. I don't even think those questions were that hard. I mean, look at Bernie Sanders and Fox News. He had a Fox News town hall like a month ago where the hosts were trying to pin him down with all these poorly framed questions. And Bernie Sanders hit that ball out of the park. Even if the questions were poorly framed, in this case it wasn't, but it gives you an opportunity to reframe it and talk about what you believe in. It just gives you a chance to defend your own values and beliefs. So what really frustrates me in this clip is Andrew Neil is a journalist. He's supposed to ask you these hard questions. This ain't like Fox News in the USA where if just pretend they're having a discussion on Medicare for all. They bring in all these supposedly neutral experts in the health system, but they're actually all hacks who just argue against Medicare for all. They're not just bringing you in there to ask you softball questions so you can just talk about whatever. Andrew Neil's asking you actual legitimate questions for you to talk about and for you to defend your policy positions. So I guess this is too much for Ben Shapiro to handle. Every time Andrew Neil asks him a question, Ben Shapiro gets mad, gets triggered, and asks a question back to Andrew Neil. Dude, you're the one being interviewed. Just answer the damn question. And throughout this entire interview, Ben Shapiro is frustrated, he's annoyed, and yet he is part of these conservative right-wing hosts who always complain about snowflake college students. Ben Shapiro and all these right-wing political hosts, they always complain about how soft, leftists are, how soft and how snowflakey college students are, all liberals and all that. Well, here he is being interviewed by Andrew Neil, being asked very fair questions and not even attempting to answer any of them and getting extremely frustrated, acting disrespectfully towards Andrew Neil, being unprofessional. Man, so much for the battle of ideas, right? Ben Shapiro is just a complete fool. He's just a complete hack, because if he honestly believed in his shit, he would stand there and defend it. He would say, I believe in XYZ. Here are the studies that show this. Here's the evidence. Here's the polling. And that is why I believe in what I believe in. But he doesn't do that. He always fights back. He questions Andrew Neil. He does personal attacks. This is in complete contrast to Bernie Sanders, who has rock solid values and beliefs, who has said the same thing for decades, who isn't afraid to defend his own policies and what he believes in, even if questions are asked and framed to him in a negative way. So, I don't know, man. I don't know why all these people like Ben Shapiro, all these. So, just by looking at this interview, you can see that Ben Shapiro is a complete fraud. And for me, what I don't like about it the most is he was so rude and disrespectful on air. You got to be at least respectful and professional when you're being interviewed. Even if sometimes if the questions aren't fair, you still got to stay cool and keep calm. Thanks again for listening, and you have a good night.